How would you like to have an infinite supply of money? Certainly, I think most people would like that. Well, I'm going to talk to you today about something we call the family legacy system. And it came about really quite by accident. But let me tell you a little bit about how it did come about and how it might be beneficial for you. So, back in the 80s, my mother and father in law owned a farm, or they called it a ranch, in southern Utah. And this was at a time when estate tax rates were high, but more importantly, the amount of money that was, or the assets that were taxed in an estate tax were really quite low. You could only leave about $600,000 to your heirs without the money over and above that being taxed at a minimum of 37%. And so estate tax planning was a big thing back then. And one of the things that the estate planning attorneys recommended was that people buy life insurance to actually be used upon death to pay the estate tax so that the farm or the family ranch didn't have to be sold. And so that's what my in-laws decided to do. I helped them get a policy on each of them. On my father-in-law, it was a $100,000 policy, and on my mother-in-law, it was a $50,000 policy. And they were limited in their budgets, and so they bought some term insurance. And if you know what term insurance is, it's very inexpensive. This particular term insurance was a 10-year period. In other words, the premium stayed level and the face amount stayed level for a period of 10 years. At the end of 10 years, the premium was going to take a big jump because the insurance companies don't want you to keep the policy after the initial period. Well, my in-laws were both 65 at the time. And 10 years goes by, almost 10 years, and I get a call from my father-in-law, and he says, Scott, we just got the bill on these insurance policies, and it's going way up, and we really can't afford it. And I said, well, there's a couple of things that we could do. Let me take a look at it. And one of the things that we looked at was in term insurance, most companies have what's called a conversion option, meaning you can exchange the policy without evidence of insurability, without taking a physical, and get a new policy. It's not another term policy, it's a cash value type policy. In this particular case, it was a universal life policy. So it would have some cash values in it. But the premium is going to be higher. And in the case of my in-laws, the premium on my father-in-law's $100,000 policy was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $6,000 a year. And the $50,000 policy on my mother-in-law, it was going to be $3,000 a year. And of course, that's a total of $9,000. And they said, Scott, we can't afford that. And I had just learned of a concept whereby family members could come together and pool their resources and pay the premium on policies on mom and dad and keep the policies in force. And then when mom and dad pass away, the heirs, the children that paid the premium would receive their pro rata share of the death benefit. And so I told my in-laws about that. They said that would be great. And at the next family gathering, I introduced the idea and the concept to my 3 brother-in-laws and my 2 sister-in-laws. And none of them were too keen about it. Now, here's what you have to understand. I'm talking about families coming together, pooling their resources to keep an asset in the family. Now, if I'd have said, look, mom and dad are going to be losing the farm, I think they'd have been very interested in pooling their resources and helping to keep the family farm and ranch in the family. But this was life insurance policies. And everybody kind of seemed to think like, well, hey, we've got the ranch, it's paid for, it's worth a lot of money. What do we need life insurance for? Even if there is some estate taxes, we'll deal with that at the time. Well, I spoke with my wife about this and I said, I really think it would be a bad idea to let these policies go. And so as a result, we talked with her parents and we agreed that we would pay the premiums all by ourselves. Now we had the capability of doing that. And, but we designed it such that if my father or mother-in-law passed away in the first year we owned the policy, that they would get the surviving spouse the surviving in-law, would get 90% of the death proceeds, and my wife and I would get 10%. And then next year it shifted from 90 down to 80, and so on, so that over the course of 10 years, every year, 10% more of the death benefit would accrue towards my wife and I. Well, it just so happens that my wife's father passed away at age 84, and he had had the policy for, we'd had this policy on him for 9 years. And so 90% of the benefit, or $90,000, came to my wife and I, and $10,000 went to her mother, as we had agreed. Now, by the way, this was a tax-free transaction. There's no income tax on life insurance proceeds. And my mother-in-law was happy about that. She realized that we paid all the premium and that she had other money, and she was now able to use those dollars for funeral expenses and so forth. Now, as it turns out, not long after my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law came to me and said, Scott, would you like to purchase some more life insurance on me? Now, think about that for a minute. Here's my mother-in-law approaching me to see if I want to buy more life insurance on her. And of course, at that time, she was about 80 years old. And, excuse me, she was about 75 or 76 years old. And so we decided to purchase a policy on her at that time. It was a $100,000 policy. And there's a little bit of a method in her madness, though, or in what you'd think is kind of a unique circumstance. And that is, my wife's younger sister was handicapped. Now, she was very highly functional, but she could never live alone. And my mother-in-law wanted to make sure that, as my wife was going to be the guardian of her sister once her mother passed away, that we had plenty of money so that we would never have to put her sister into a care center. And so that was her reasoning. That's why she wanted us to have this additional life insurance. And so we were able to get it. Some people think that once you're over a certain age, you can't get insurance. Well, you can. And she qualified for it at standard rates. And it wasn't too many years after that we decided to buy another policy. And so, all told, over a period of time, I acquired $250,000 of life insurance on my mother-in-law. And she lived to be 91 years old. Now, she lived a great life. She was happy. The last 4 years of her life, she lived with my wife and I, and we took care of her and my sister-in-law, my wife's younger sister that was handicapped. And we were happy to have all the time with her mom that we could. But she did pass away, as all of us are going to pass away at some point in time. So what I want you to understand is this, is that we talk to our clients about creating financial certainty. And one of the processes that we also educate our clients about is something we call leveraging the value of certainty. And what we mean by that is the family legacy system, meaning don't let mom and dad or grandma and grandpa die without the maximum amount of life insurance that they can possibly qualify for, that the family can afford to keep in force. And so in this particular case, we had a $100,000 policy on my father-in-law and a total of $250,000 on my mother-in-law. Now, just to give you an idea, most people don't think of life insurance as an asset. They don't think of it as something that you can pass from one generation to the other. But let me tell you, first off, is that if I look at all the premiums that I put into my father-in-law's policy and work out the return, my return on that policy was 6.31%. Now, remember, this was back in the 90s that he passed away, and so 6% was a pretty decent rate of return. And it's also, keep in mind that a life insurance death benefit is tax-free to family members. So there was no tax on that, which means it was more like a 8.5 to a 9% taxable rate of return. That's pretty good on what we call safe money. Now, the three policies on my mother-in-law The first policy was in force for a total of 16 years, and the rate of return on that policy was about 4.5%. Not great, but remember, it's tax-free. The second policy was in force for 9 years. The rate of return on that ended up being about 20%, a little over that. And the third policy was in force for about 6 years, and that rate of return was over 26%. All of this is tax-free. Now, there's a lot of nuances to this whole process, but I wanted to introduce this concept to you. This is something that we work with many of our clients and their children, or the kids and their parents or their grandparents, helping everyone understand that everyone has an economic or a human life value. And when we purchase adequate insurance to cover that, instead of lapsing it, every year, millions and millions and millions of dollars of insurance is lapsed by older people because they don't want it, they don't need it, they can't afford it, when they should be turning to their kids and their grandkids to pool resources, keep those policies in force, and let them mature as a death benefit when mom and dad or grandma and grandpa pass away. And here is tax-free generational wealth. In my family, I have a lot of insurance, and I've talked with my children about the insurance that they have on their lives. There's insurance on the grandkids. We have created a multi-generational process where, as the aging generation passes away, large amounts of tax-free cash come into existence, and that continues to fund the next generation's policies. And when that generation passes away, that funds the next generation. But we're constantly creating more and more tax-free generational wealth by this one simple mechanism. And quite frankly, for the vast majority of Americans, this is probably one of the most powerful and simple ways to create and leave substantial amounts of wealth, and it's all tax-free. So if you'd like to learn more about the family legacy system and how it might work for you and your family, click on the link below, and if you would, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we're constantly pushing more information out, and we'd like to get our message out to more people. We look forward to helping you in the future.